The Yankees split the four-game set with the Baltimore Orioles. This really was a disappointing end to the series, and the big story is going to be Luis Severino. And, in part, it's because of the fact that this was the last game of the series, and so it's the most recent. But Sevy has been an absolute disaster this season, in terms of durability, which has been a problem in the past. But what is new is just complete ineffectiveness and really just getting absolutely annihilated regularly. Like, Sevy now has had on the season, is it 9 starts? It's either 9 or 10. Severino has had 9 starts. 5 of them have been, horrible. One of them was so-so. Out of the 9, 5 game log, stat lines that are just straight ugly. He has a 7.38 ERA on the season in these 9 starts and a 1.80 whip, only 37 strikeouts in 42 2/3 innings. And the last 7 starts is even uglier. I think the ERA is over 9 in the last 7 starts. I mean, that is hard to do. And so this was hard to predict. If we're being fair about this with Severino, in looking at his stats, and again, he hasn't really been healthy for a whole lot of it, but Sevy, besides 2016, which I remember, that was a bit of a nightmare for Sevy. He was really young at that point, coming off of a strong, short sample size 2015 season. 2016 was rough, and they moved him to the pen by the end of the season, and things turned around. Either way, though, he then had really, arguably, his most complete season in 2017. That was probably, 17 and 18 were the 2 seasons that he was actually healthy the whole time. And so Sevy, it's never been a matter of him not being good, but now, the fastball ain't working, the slider ain't working, he just is trying to find it, and he's not getting anywhere. Is he tipping his pitches? Maybe, but his opposing batting average is .315. It's just ugly any way you want to slice and dice. And the Texas start a couple outings ago was seemingly a step in the right direction, and he followed it up with a stinker against St. Louis and an absolute shit show against the Baltimore Orioles. So that's the main source of conversation, among many other things. And there's a lot to talk about that came out of this series, and it's too bad for the Yankees that they could have found themselves, and this is being greedy, 1 back on the loss side of Baltimore coming out of the series. They came in 5 out of the loss, and that's where they leave. But I would have been fine with being 3 out of the loss. Winning 3 out of 4 was very much within their grasp, and Game 3 is the game that bothers me the most. Game 3 was there for the Yankees to take. Randy Vasquez goes 5 scoreless innings, and unfortunately, we'll talk about it when we get there, but some of the Boone decisions, they're frustrating. And do I understand some of the reasoning? Yeah, I guess, but not enough of a killer instinct to go and grab the game with your best relievers, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring you, especially with Severino on the mound. And honestly, sadly, a likely chance that he would get annihilated, which he was. And so you end up using Wandy Peralta down 14 runs in the 8th inning, just as an example. And you could have, and you're using Nick Ramirez in a big spot in the 6th inning, the game before, when you could have won the series right then and there. Another thing that comes to mind is this is reminiscent of Yankees-Orioles. I can't remember the date, but it must have been, around a month ago or so, give or take, right? And that was a 3-game set, and that involved the beginning of that series being a really nice Yankee comeback, which is what we saw here, where the Oriole bullpen doesn't get it done. The one from a month ago or so, again, it might have been more than that. I'm wrong, right? It absolutely was more than that because Judge was healthy. Yeah, no, this must have been about maybe sometime in May, right? This was sometime in May, and Judge homered off of Bautista, and then Volpe, I believe, had a sac fly to win it. And then that was the infamous second game where Cortez just, blew the game. Adam Frazier hits that home run off the pole. They lose it. It was a tough loss, and then they lose the series. Kyle Gibson pitched the gem. This was kind of similar in a 4-game series where you had that comeback win, you're feeling good, you win the first game of the series, and then, the series starts to turn, and then it gets somewhat ugly by the end, and Baltimore walks out of there both times feeling better than the Yankees do. Like, if you're an Oriole fan, a team that had been struggling, you feel, hey, you kind of take the split. And the funny thing is, the Rays are really struggling. They're on a five-game losing streak, so yet the Yankees are still only 7 back on the loss of Tampa. As bad as kind of things feel from a Yankees standpoint, where, look, they went 3-3 on that road trip, which was a little underwhelming. They lost 2 of 3 at the Cards, who are not a good team these days. And now they followed up with splitting Baltimore, which was my prediction. You look back last episode, I predicted it probably would be a split, which wasn't a bold prediction, but I was hoping the Yankees could prove me wrong and take 3 out of 4, and they failed to do so. So we've seen a lot of that lately, where these series, and this is what the Yankees are. The Yankees are, without Aaron Judge, they're about a 500 baseball team. They just are. Maybe that's even being generous. But the Yanks have really, these series end up like a 3-game set. There's a good chance that series is going to end up 2 of 3. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's not a whole lot of sweeps. These are the Yankees come out of it. That's why they've been hovering around where they are. The Yankees are now 8 over 500. They got the 10 over after game 2. And now they're back down to 8. So the Yankees record now sits at 48-40, which on the whole isn't terrible. Where that sits them is tied for that last wildcard spot with the Toronto Blue Jays. And the Yankees will now have an important 3-game series home against the Chicago Cubs, a team that is trending downward. Chicago Cubs team that it's better than last year's version, but a team that that the Yankees should have some level of success against, but we'll see. A lot to discuss this series. And I'm trying to think of more housekeeping items as far as injuries and things of that nature. I'm gonna think about it more recently, and we'll kind of work our way backwards with that. So Jake Bauers is likely headed to the IL. We'll talk about, again, the outfield defense is a major, major problem for this Yankee team, specifically left field, but just in general. When Bader's in there, right, you got center field covered. And, of course, when Judge is in there, you got right field, but that he hasn't been healthy. So right field becomes a bit of an issue. But at Yankee Stadium, where you need a good left fielder, the Yankees are not getting that. They are not getting that at all. So that's a problem. So what happened was Jake Bauers dove for a ball. I think he lost in lights, and he hurt his left shoulder. Doesn't sound like it's anything that's going to keep him out long term. But he got a cortisone shot, but it's going to be an IL stint for Bauers, so we'll find out what the corresponding move is there. It'll probably either be Franchy Cordero, who's already on the 40-man roster, or Estevan Florial, who is not on the 40-man roster. Florial is the more exciting move, but either way, it's not going to, realistically, either move is not going to do that much, but expect one of those two to get the call for the start of the Cubs series. I would be surprised if that weren't the case. And then, of course, Randy. So I should have. Okay, so now it's coming back to me. Jimmy Cordero was suspended for the rest of the season for domestic abuse. Now we don't know the details at all. We don't know the details at all. What exactly it was, but that is the general. That is what I will say generally. So very disappointing. Glad that he's gone. I don't want to see him again. Look, and the Yankees. Domingo Germán was kind of let off the hook in the sense that he served his time, which was a long suspension. And, look, obviously he had the perfect game and everything. But with Jimmy Cordero, you got to cut the cord there. He was put on the restricted list. I would be stunned to ever see him as a New York Yankee again. And look, that's just unacceptable behavior. Clearly this was something serious. He was suspended for the rest of the season and postseason, and there was no... the Yankees didn't try to appeal. That was it. They, accepted it for what it was. He's out of the mix now, and so we didn't know really who like the Rodon spot was gonna. I thought maybe there was a chance that Ramirez would lose that spot because he had options, but now, Cordero is the one that goes, and so Randy Vasquez came up, and Cordero was gone. And then Vasquez got sent down after his good outing for Davy Garcia, who actually pitched in that blowout loss. And so did Isaiah Kiner-Falefa had his 4th pitching appearance of the season, which is just wild. And now tomorrow, Carlos Rodon will take the spot of Davy Garcia. And so we'll see. I feel like there could be some more moves on the horizon. I mean, Albert Abreu is dealing with an illness. And so if that's all it is, I guess they'll keep him around. But, Boone had kind of said that. But it just feels like, things are in flux right now, but that in terms of housekeeping and roster moves, those are the ones that I think I covered all of them. But let's jump into the series. So things started out well in the results, not in terms of how game one began, but Aaron Hicks was booed vociferously. And look, I don't blame the fans. And I think the reasons are this. Was Aaron Hicks a bad guy? No, he wasn't. I was bothered by his attitude a lot. I really feel like, and look, he said some things to the media. Like, it was never anything terrible, but it was all reading between the lines. He was kind of pissing and moaning. And look, he just wasn't performing. And so, I mean, the Yankee fans really gave it to him. I think what people are forgetting, like Michael Kay, had a problem with the booing, and like, I disagree with him. I understand where the fans are coming from. I don't think it helps. It's not Hicks's fault. Like, Hicks is doing what he has to do, but for him to go to Baltimore and do well, it just adds a little different level of pain. Like if Hicks comes back and he's on San Diego or whatever, I think the booing would still be there, but I think you have to factor everything in. And again, not saying that's Hicks' fault. Look, he's doing his job. Like, he's trying to keep his MLB career alive. Like, good for him that he was doing for Baltimore. But I do think that bothered me as well. It's like, really? Like, you kidding me? Like, now you're in the division and you're really helping out a rival? Great. So, Hicks, and they gave him a tribute video, and they booed him after that as well. I just think he maybe in some ways is symbolic of sort of what we've seen from the Yankees and sort of Brian Cashman, that, durability concerns and just, I just think when you factor it all in, I'm not surprised. You know what? Maybe a little surprised, but just by how much it was. But Hicks totally booed and look, and give him, he, I think he said all the right things. He didn't, he handled it well, for what it's worth. But game one was Domingo Germán making his first start since the perfect game, and it didn't really go so well for Germán. It's kind of interesting. You have that perfect game, but surrounded that is not great performances. This was better than it was versus the Red Sox and the Mariners, but Germán gave up 9 hits in 4 1/3 innings in this one. So when I look at this lineup, LeMahieu started at the top, but as the series ended, LeMahieu was now down to the 7th hole, and Anthony Volpe's leading off, which I agree with. LeMahieu has been bad. His batting average is now below 220. I believe it's probably 219 if I'm being exact, but man, there are concerns for me as far as DJ LeMahieu is concerned. Really, really major concerns. Is he healthy? If he is healthy, what's going on? Like, this is not the same player that we saw a few years ago, and, could this be the beginning of the end for DJ? And that's a problem, because you have 3 more years on the contract after this year, so he needs to get right, and I don't know, it's not looking good. So he led off to start this series, and, not a whole lot else to touch on, I guess. Stanton was in the field. It's a 4-game set, so let's go into it. There is a lot to discuss. So, Orioles get on the board first. Germán actually had pitched 10 perfect innings if you include the last start, because the first inning was a 1-2-3 inning, but then things got dicey for him in the second, and fielding was an issue. And from an unlikely source in this instance, Harrison Bader. It's a single by Ryan O'Hearn who killed the Yankees this series, and Bader kind of flubs the play, and so it turns into him being at second instead of first. Eventually, you get a Cedric Mullins RBI single to make it 1-0. And again, I have to be careful here in reviewing this, because there were plays that were not ruled errors, like especially in left, that were problems, but I'll try to do my best. But yeah, I think after that, I think it was fairly normal. So an RBI single for Cedric Mullins makes it 1-0. We go to the third, right, and this is where kind of Falefa messes up. Gunnar Henderson with the 1-out single, I think that was normal. But then the Adley Rutschman double into the corner and left was just poorly played by Connor Falefa. So IKF, who had really done a pretty nice job out there, you're starting to see some problems, whether it be left or center, but it seems like left is giving him more of a problem, where he's been short hopping the ball and just indecisive and just not doing well. To be fair, he's not an outfielder. He's doing the best he can. And look, and as a hitter, he's still, this series and thinking about it, like, he didn't do a whole lot. He had some hits, but he's doing the best he can, honestly. And so the Orioles take a 2-0 lead, and then Ryan O'Hearn gets an RBI single to make it 3-0. So the Yankees are down early, and it's not looking good. But I'm not going to go too deep into the weeds just because there's 4 games here, and there's already been a lot to discuss. But let's just jump. Nick Ramirez does a nice job. So as much as I'm going to shit on Nick Ramirez in Game 3, Ramirez, first and third, 1 out in the 5th, does get O'Hearn to strike out and Urias to ground out. So, like, this game could have gone in a bad direction, but they held it at 3-0. And then in the 5th, Volpe homers with 2 outs, his 11th homer of the year, and then Higashioka hits his 4th homer of the year. So Volpe continues his hot play. And Higashioka, really under the radar as a hitter, has done a pretty nice job. Considering what he is, he has done better than Trevino. Although I'll say, I think combined, both had a solid enough series. There was definitely contributions there from the catcher position offensively. So it's 3-2. Ramirez pitches a scoreless 6th as well. And we go to, in the bottom of the 6th, Giancarlo Stanton hit a fucking shot off the top of the wall, but it was only a double, unfortunately. So Stanton showing signs of life coming out of it, and he's played the field as well. So he's getting going. It's slow, though. I'm not saying he's definitely not there, but it's getting better. In the 7th, Ian Hamilton comes on, gets into some trouble, but he does get out of it. But it wasn't easy, and Hamilton has not looked very good since coming back from the IL, right? So that's something to look into. Hamilton definitely, in terms of the circle of trust in the bullpen, definitely not high on my list now. In the 7th, the Yanks do tie it up. Kiner left a single off of Mike Baumann, who replaced Tyler Wells, the starter. Then Volpe singles. It's 1st and 2nd. Higashioka sack bunt, which I didn't love because you had LeMahieu coming up on deck, and LeMahieu fucks up. He grounds out to the pitcher, and so he does not get the job done. They get the out at home. So Higgy bunting, you can't kill it, but know the situation. And they brought in Cano, who has been struggling lately, but is an all-star. Was good for a while this year. But the Yankees have done good against Cano, and luckily he throws a wild pitch. So while Gleyber Torres is up, Volpe was on 3rd, he scores. So it's a big wild pitch. The Yankees tied up at 3. In the 8th, Tommy Kahnle comes on, allows a 2-out single to Hicks, but he strikes at a couple. Tommy Kahnle has been great. I mean, in terms of that bullpen, Kahnle is up at the top. In terms of who I trust, Kahnle might be at the very top. But that's no slight to Clay Holmes, who's really done a very, very good job. But Kahnle has been awesome. And we go to the bottom of the 8th, and the Yankees get it done in the 8th off of a combination of Cano and Kalum, the lefty. Stanton leadoff single off of Cano. And then they bring in the lefty for Rizzo, and he singles. So Rizzo, who still is trying to find it, Rizzo has not homered in about 35 or so games. It is bad. But, Rizzo, I wouldn't say this was a good series, but this was a good moment. And Rizzo, he's been better against lefties than righties. And so he singles here, 1st and 2nd. And then Harrison Bader with the big blow, a 3-run homer, his 7th of the year. A breaking ball, hung it, banged it out to left. And Bader is one of the clutchest guys on this team. He's clutch. And I wish that we could have discussed that more in this series, because he had a big hit in Game 2 as well to kind of break things open. Bader, you just got to feel good about him. If you're a Yankee fan, you kind of gotta love Harrison Bader in terms of what he brings you defensively. What you don't like is the injuries. You don't like the injuries, but in terms of expectation, I feel like he's definitely exceeded that. He's a good player. He's a very good player. And so that makes it 6-3, a big 3-run homer. And then the 9th, Clay Holmes comes on, gets a couple of strikeouts and a ground out as well to finish it off. So Clay Holmes, a couple of hiccups here and there recently, but he's been very, very solid. And so the Yankees win 6-3. That was a fun win. And the Yankees carried that into Game 2. Game 2 was another feel-good type game. And it was Clark Schmidt versus Kyle Gibson. And Kyle Gibson shut the Yankees down last time, but they got to him this time. And Clark Schmidt was really good for 4 innings, then it kind of fell apart on him. So we've seen that with Clark, where he's one of the guys that you kind of want to give a quick hook to. Which is kind of a theme just in pitching in general in baseball and with the Yankees. But Clark was awesome for 4 innings, and then it fell apart on him in the 5th. So unfortunately, the final line isn't great, but also not terrible against a tough Baltimore lineup. Again, I'm seeing signs of improvement with Clark, if nothing else. And he's been a very serviceable option in the rotation the last couple of months, which is good. So in this one, LeMahieu, no LeMahieu, no Donald. I mean, LeMahieu came in as a pinch hitter, but no LeMahieu or Donaldson in the starting lineup. Of note as well, Billy McKinney to start this series was coming off of he had fouled the ball off his foot, I guess in the St. Louis series is probably what it was. So he would eventually make his way back in. And unfortunately for McKinney, he has really definitely struggled. And unfortunately, that feel-good situation that you had is kind of gone now, unfortunately, but, not totally unexpected either. So, in this one, Schmidt versus Gibson, the Yankees jump out to an early lead. Gleyber Torres, it's a 2-run homer to start it out. And Rizzo would lead off in this one. They're trying new things, right? So Rizzo led off in game 2, and I think in game 3 as well. Maybe game 3. We'll get to that one. But Gleyber, 2-run homer, his 13th homer of the year, gives the Yankees a 2-0 lead. And then Schmidt and Gibson settle in, and we're pitching well for a while. But in the 4th, the Yankees score a run, a walk to Bowers, a hit by pitch to Bader, which was a little bit concerning, but he's okay. Seemingly okay. He did not play in the 3rd game, but, would start in game 4. It seems no worse for wear. Eventually, you get a sac fly by Connor Falefa to give the Yankees a 3-0 lead. In the 5th, Aaron Hicks. He gets a little bit of revenge. He homers. As the fans boo him, Hicks homers, his 6th homer of the season, and that cuts it to 3-1. And then a Westberg double and a very poor play by Oswaldo Cabrera. So Cabrera, who again is a natural infielder, that's a play that a normal outfielder, I think they make it. He hit it hard, Westberg, but it's a double. But again, left field defense. And Adam Frazier, then it's a 2-run homer to tie it up at 3. So it all kind of falls apart for Clark pretty quickly there. And then in the 5th, though, the Yankees do score. You get a 2-out walk by Gleyber Torres, then a single by Stanton that Gleyber scores on. So to me, this is Gleyber kind of acting reckless, but he kind of makes it out okay. So it was a single kind of up the middle. The outfield was played back, and Gleyber goes through Luis Rojas' stop sign and scores. So I guess you could say that Gleyber was kind of instinctive, but also more bad than good comes from it. So I'm not going to be praiseworthy of Gleyber, but I can understand why some might be. But either way, the Yankees take a 4-3 lead. We go to the 6th, leadoff single Rushman, so they take Clark Schmidt out. Again, things kind of fell apart for Clark a little bit there. And then Marinaccio gets into trouble, but does get out of it. So for Ron, he's a guy that for me, again, is a little bit lower on that pecking order, which says a lot about the Yankees bullpen. But Ron gets into trouble, but does escape it with bases loaded. He gets Westberg to fly out to end the inning. Then in the 7th, Wandy comes on, and it's a pretty strong inning for Wandy. Gets 3 groundouts. There was a single mixed in there, but the Yankees keep that short 4-3 lead. And then the Yankees against lefty Nick Vespi get going. Jose Trevino with an opposite field home run. His 4th homer of the season makes it 5-3. And then eventually you get it's with the bases loaded, 2 out, and Harrison Bader gets a 2-run double. To make it 7-3. That was a really big hit to give the Yankees some breathing room. Then Kahnle comes in a 4-run game. It's too bad because, Volpe comes up and strikes out. If Volpe got a hit after Bader, then Kahnle wouldn't have come on. So it sucked that Kahnle in a 4-run game. I get it. The Yankees view a 4-run game because you don't get hole for the way the rules work. In a 4-run game like that, you wouldn't get a hole, but they still kind of view that, I guess, as a tight spot. So Kahnle comes on, gets the job done, but then he wasn't really available because he had pitched the night before as well. So he wasn't available for game 3, which, again, there's a trickle-down effect. The Yankees score one more run in the 8th, which was good. It didn't matter as it really turned out, but Clay Holmes was avoided because the Yankees score a run. There was an RBI ground up by Rizzo. Makes it 8-3. Albert Abreu comes on in the 9th, gets into some trouble, gives up a run, but he finishes it off. And so they avoid Holmes. Like I said, again, it didn't really matter when it was all said and done later on in the series, but the Yankees win at 8-4, and so they win the first 2. So you're thinking, all right, one more win, they win the series. Nope, that's not going to happen. But they were teased. Game 3 was the turning point of this series. Just as I said in last time, where that Game 2 was the turning point in that last Baltimore series. Very frustrating that these trends continue. And so it is Dean Kramer versus Randy Vasquez, which ended up being a much better pitching matchup than most would have thought. Vasquez and Brito, who have struggled in AAA, have done a nice job when called upon. And Vasquez, again, goes 5 scoreless. He only got 1 strikeout, and there was 3 walks. So you look at that ratio. It's a bad ratio. But yet he's just finding ways to escape. And for the Yanks, Rizzo did lead off again. Stanton played the outfield again. And Harrison Bader was out of the starting lineup for this one. So it was a scoreless game until the fifth, and it's funny, the Josh Donaldson weird stats continue, where Donaldson, in games that Donaldson does well, in games that he homers, the Yankees are like, what, 1-6, is it? Or 1-7. Might be 1-7. Then the Yankees are 1-7 in games in which Donaldson has homered. It's bizarre how this happens, but Josh homers. He had a good game in this one. And again, for me, concerns with Donaldson as well, but I guess, he showed some signs in this series. I wouldn't hold my breath, but Donaldson homers. It's his 9th homer of the year, makes it 1-0. And then eventually you get another run. You get an RBI single by Higashioka to make it 2-0. So good stuff. Then Nick Ramirez comes on in the 6th. I would have either let Vasquez start the 6th, or more likely gone straight to Michael King. Just go straight. Try to get the last 12 outs between King, Peralta, and Holmes. Do it. And they didn't. And I know Nick Ramirez has been serviceable lately. He has been. I'll be fair about that. But it didn't make me feel good, and unfortunately, it hurt the Yankees in a major way. He gets the first out. But then it's a 1-out double by Mullins, a single by Hicks on a nice diving play by Donaldson, where if he gets up and he's racing towards Mullins, going to third, but unfortunately loses balance and Mullins gets in there. So I don't know if Donaldson stays up. Could he have gotten there? Maybe. We'll never know. And then you get an RBI single by Colton Cowser in his major league debut. So the Orioles are just calling. I mean, the Orioles are going to be a good team. They're already a good team, but their prospect pool is impressive. This is going to be a team to deal with. And so then Michael King comes on, and at this point it's 2-1, first and third, 1 out, and really the big play of the game, Jordan Westburg hits one hard to left. Jake Bauers dives and doesn't come up with it. And it's very frustrating because Bauers, we haven't seen those defensive deficiencies recently because the ball kind of hasn't found him. It found him. And so again, Bauers, he does get hurt. He would finish this game, but we found out later that he got hurt. And 2-run score. Bauers needs to either just play it on a hop or make the fucking play. And neither of those things happen, so it ends up going down as a 2-run triple, makes it 3-2, and then Adam Frazier reaches on a fielder's choice where the infield was in, Volpe fields it, throws home, just a lot of sloppy play there where Higashioka doesn't come out with it. Again, Westburg might have been safe even if they did it perfectly. I also thought maybe Michael King could have snagged it. Either way, that's a big extra run to give the Orioles a 4-2 lead, and, Dean Kramer really settling in. And let's jump to, again, and King, King would find it, but what does it matter? In the 8th, Cano comes in for Kramer, and the Yankees are getting to Cano. Volpe homers again. Volpe, opposite field, his 12th homer of the season, makes it 4-3, and then McKinney pinch hits for Higashioka, and McKinney gets lucky. He gets an infield soft single. But then Rizzo flies out, and then to be fair, Rizzo, when he hit it, you thought maybe he had a chance. He just got under it. It was well shy of the warning track. Then Glaber pops out, and then Felix Bautista comes on for a 4-out save, and Stanton lines out to center. So it remains 4-3, and then Ian Hamilton comes on, and I had a little bit of a problem with this as well. Why, you could have went with Wandy or Holmes there. I know you're losing, but Ian Hamilton's been bad lately, and unfortunately, Hamilton fucks up, and he gives up a 2-run homer to Ryan O'Hearn. And so at that point, it's totally over. You're down 6-3 against Bautista, and the Yankees, there would be a 1-out walk by Donaldson, but they would lose the game 6-3, and so now the series is 2-1 Yanks, and the final game is Kyle Bradish versus Luis Severino. And boy, was this ugly. Another ugly Yankee loss. We've seen maybe 5 or 6 of them this year where they just get annihilated. And that's what happened here. The defense was bad, but most importantly, Severino was terrible. Again. So you get a leadoff home run by Gunnar Henderson, right? And that was kind of unfair. I mean, look, I don't know how that went out. It was an opposite field homer for Henderson, his 12th homer of the season. And this would not be the last that we would hear of Gunnar Henderson. Bradish, who, is one of the Orioles' better pitchers, in terms of, their rotation's not great, but Bradish has been solid. He just hasn't gotten the run support lately. But it's the third inning is when things completely blow up. Santander singles to start out, and then Ryan O'Hearn doubles. And was this where was the one where Connor Falefa fucks up? Was it there? Maybe not. I'm not sure. Connor Falefa, I mean, maybe that was, I don't know. Maybe that was earlier. Yeah, that might have been, that was earlier. I think this might have been a normal RBI double. I think. Either way, oh no, yeah, right. This is the one. Yeah, no, I think this was kind of played a little bit poorly. So it's an RBI double by O'Hearn makes it 2-0. Then an RBI double by Mullins makes it 3-0. And then you get a Westberg RBI double makes it 4-0. Severino would hang on for a little bit until a Gunnar Henderson RBI single. Apologies if I missed a defensive miscue here, as there was some. I know there was a play where when Abreu comes in. So Abreu comes in, Sevy's booed off the mound, deservedly so. He gave up 10 hits in 2 1/3 innings. Or was it 2 2/3? Maybe it was 2 2/3. Either way, it was a joke. I think it was 2 2/3. So Abreu comes on and Rushman hits the ball. All right, sorry. The Henderson single went under Glaber's glove. Could have had that one maybe. And then Abreu gives up a single to Adley Rushman. Volpe jumps it and just doesn't come down with it. Volpe probably should have caught that. So it's 6-0. And eventually it becomes 8-0 after a Ryan O'Hearn 2-run single. So yeah, Sevy ends up giving up 7 on the night, which is just sadly par for the course for Sevy. And Abreu really got smacked around in the fourth. You could tell he wasn't feeling it, and it turns out he has an illness. I kind of felt bad for him. Like, they should have taken Abreu out of there, but he gives up an RBI single to Ramon Urias and a 3-run homer to Gunnar Henderson to make it 12-0. So Abreu's stats of the night were ugly. I think it ended up being maybe like 2/3 of an inning, maybe 6 runs. 3, 4. I think it was 6 runs because they kept him in. Davey Garcia comes in, and Ryan O'Hearn gets a sac fly. Right, yeah, I think 6 runs in 2/3 of an inning. So Davey Garcia had to come on, and he did the job. I mean, look, Davey Garcia at this point is not seen as anything special in this organization anymore, like he was a few years ago. He's fallen off. He's now a reliever. He's strictly a reliever now. So after all that, and like I said, O'Hearn sac fly. It's 13-0 at this point. That score remained for quite some time. Yankees offense wasn't going to do shit. Really all night long, basically. Bradish ends up going, I think, 6 innings. Ron Marinaccio has to come on in the 7th, pitches a scoreless inning, and then in the 8th, Wandy comes down. Wandy Peralta was in the game down 13-0, and he would give up a run, an RBI grounded by Cedric Mullins. I mean, it was a bit of a mess. I think he hit one guy, and threw a wild pitch. He was a bit erratic, but it just sucks that Wandy was in down fucking 14-0 in the 8th inning when he could have been in there yesterday in a much bigger spot. But this is what happens. This is the fucking managing that happens. And then in the 9th, Kiner Falefa, scoreless inning. Kiner Falefa's ERA is like 2.25 in 4 appearances. I mean, he throws strikes. And, I guess he's getting lucky, but it is funny how he has 4 freaking relief appearances. And the Yankees do get a run in the 9th. Bizzardo comes on for the Orioles, who's, more of a minor league pitcher. And Oswaldo Cabrera gets a leadoff double. He came in when Kiner Falefa was brought in as a pitcher, or switched to a pitcher. And then McKinney reaches on an error. It was kind of unfair. Probably should have been an RBI single, but they call it an error. And so the shutout's over. It's 14-1, and then LeMahieu fittingly grounds out to the pitcher to end the game. And so an ugly way to end this one. Again, there was a lot to talk about here. And let me just quickly preview this Yankee-Cubs series, which is going to be the last series before the All-Star break. So Game 1's interesting. It's Jameson Taillon, who's really, really struggled as a Cub. He's 2-6 with a 6.93 ERA. These are like Severino-type numbers, But Jameson, he'll be back at Yankee Stadium. Didn't have a problem. Look, I thought he was solid in his 2 seasons as a Yank. Glad, it was good they didn't bring him back, but, he did a good job with the Yankees. After a rough beginning, too, in 2021 against Carlos Rodon. That's the big story. Rodon making his Yankee debut. And look, if you're a Yankee fan, you're really hoping that he can really, really get it done, in the first game. They need him. They're going to need some length from him, which is not what you want. They're not going to push him, but you kind of need him to be efficient because the Yankees bullpen is really in a tough spot right now. They're pretty thin. And then also, I think this is going to be Mike Tauchman's return to Yankee Stadium. I don't think, he was on San Francisco. I don't really recall. I don't think that they had played at Yankee Stadium or even played San Francisco when he was there. So this will be a return for Tauchman, and that is obviously much lesser news. And also, ironically, tomorrow night is Luis Severino bobblehead night. Very interesting. I mean, that is not great timing there. So then Game 2, the lefty Drew Smyly, a veteran, against Garrett Cole. Smiley's put together a nice season. He's 7-5 with a 4.1 ERA. Let me take a look at some of his other numbers. Yeah, not great. Not and he's been bad lately. He's been bad lately, Smiley. So that on paper, that's an advantage Yankees. And then game 3 is Kyle Hendricks versus Domingo Germán. That one, out of all of them, will be the toughest. Hendricks he doesn't get many strikeouts, but he's been pretty damn good. So, you look at this, in games 1 and 2, advantage Yankees. Game 3, I might say advantage Cubs. And so for the Yankees, hoping to take 2 out of 3 before the All-Star break. And, a lot more bad than good can happen here as far as I'm concerned. A bad Cubs series can really leave a very sour taste in the Yankees' mouths. Yankees were at their peak last year when they swept the Cubs at home last year, but times are very different now. And this is also a little bit of a better Cub team. The Yankees do catch a break. They will miss Justin Steele and Marcus Stroman, the 2 best Cub starters. But, you look at that rotation, and if Tyone wasn't so terrible, this rotation really isn't that bad, all's considered. But again, Yankees now 48-40. It ends up being a very tough split. Severino gets bombed, and we'll see what happens in these last 3 games before the All-Star break, and hopefully the Yankees can win this series versus the Cubs.